Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast, a very special episode as you'll see from the title of the show. I'm Alex Moss and with me, my co-host Burton DeWitt. You're speaking to all of the powerhouses in darts today. How are you doing?
I am doing just fine, enjoying a nice, cool week as winter finally arrives in DC. How are you, Alex?
Glad to hear it. Yeah, all good this end. Thank you very much. And we'll be back a little bit later to discuss the PDC's news from earlier today. But let's get straight into the chat. You spoke with the PDC chairman, Eddie Hearn, earlier today. So here's Burton's chat with Eddie.
I'm joined today by the chairman of the PDC as well as of Matchroom Sport, Eddie Hearn. Eddie, how are you?
I'm very good, Burton. Nice to finally meet you after hearing about you on several occasions. All good, as I told you previously.
Well, thank you. We're very glad to finally have you on. And can't be a much better time to have you on than just ahead of the World Championships. We're just a little over a week before the start of the event at Ali Pali. It'll be your first as chairman of the PDC. How are you feeling?
Feeling good. I mean, I'd like to say that I brought the crowds back, but not really. It was just hopefully a sign of the end of the pandemic. And I feel like last year was such a huge learning curve for so many businesses, but of course the PDC and Matt Porter and the team did such an amazing job to ride the storm for a sport that I really felt would be hugely affected by loss of fans at live events. And actually I was very wrong. You know, I think what they did behind closed doors was exceptional from a broadcast point of view, but how the players performed and gave us so many great matches without a live crowd. I think now for the return at our flagship event, I think you're going to see the best worlds ever. And I think you're going to see an unbelievable atmosphere at Ali Pali.
And of course, get back to how the PDC coped with the pandemic in a little bit. But let's talk about you for a bit. It was just this past April that the news broke that your father, Barry Hearn, would be stepping aside and you'd be becoming the chairman of Matchroom Sport. How has the last 8 months been in that position?
Challenging, really. You know, as for a business that sort of strives to create great live atmospheres for fans and as a TV spectacle across so many different sports, just the most sort of surreal business environment that you could have ever imagined. And, you know, my dad's very passionate about giving talent, players, opportunities to achieve in sport. And he made it adamant that, you know, we wouldn't look at a reduction in prize money at tournaments. In fact, we wouldn't even discuss it. And in fact, we would try to raise prize money in tournaments, even in an environment where a huge portion of your revenue had been depleted through the inability to bring ticket sales to an event. So luckily, during my sort of relative few months as chairman, Matt Porter and the amazing operational team have done such a great job. And I've had to probably spend a little bit more time on my core business, which is, of course, boxing, to help maintain our market position in this environment, whilst also, you know, being heavily involved with the PDC and the board. But moving into 2022, as hopefully we come through the pandemic and I can just start easing my foot off the gas on boxing a little bit and continue to be more involved in the darts space, particularly with the global look of darts. You know, that's something that we've done with boxing, is to expand quite rapidly globally. And I really feel that darts has huge potential in that respect as well.
So both parts of that answer, starting with boxing, obviously, as you said, it's been a huge part of your life. For a very long time. You've been, I guess now 7-8 years overseeing its growth and popularity as the chairman on the boxing side. What achievements are you most proud of from your time as a boxing promoter?
Iconic events. You know, I think we've got a great business at Matchroom, but me and my dad always sort of joke that we're failed athletes, right? Because what we'd love to be doing is playing, but we were never good enough. So this is the next best thing. This is the next best buzz, is to create iconic moments and moments you can sit there as a fan, really. And for me, in boxing, that would be breaking the record for Joshua Klitschko with 90,000 at Wembley, or this year, breaking the US record for Canelo Alvarez against Billy Joe Saunders for 75,000 at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, to creating events in Saudi Arabia and the global growth of boxing through Matchroom in Italy, in Spain, in Germany, in Mexico, America, of course. So probably my proudest achievement is to break into the US market, which has traditionally been very difficult for a UK business and promoter to do, and to secure major TV deals in those markets. So, but it's all about creating great moments, iconic moments. That's why I love the World so much, because it's just such a iconic event for our sport. And as well, the one thing that we're always battling with is darts getting the justice it deserves in terms of its size. Because not many people know that darts is the second highest rating sport on Sky. And darts batters boxing in terms of live viewership, which my dad will tell me on a regular basis. But it sometimes doesn't get that respect as a commercial giant, which it is, because sometimes it's just, it's darts, and I feel like that's a big part of what we need to do, is give it perhaps more of a corporate identity as a major player in terms of business, the sports business, because it consistently performs in the UK, and now it consistently performs around the world as well. The viewing figures we're seeing in Germany and other territories as well, it's incredible, and then we're nowhere near the ceiling in so many emerging territories.
Of course. And I guess, so let's talk a little bit about darts. And before we get into the details of the PDC, just a question about you. What are your earliest memories of darts, whether it was playing, watching, or whatever?
Well, always playing on a Sunday, missing the board quite often and getting told off by my mum, because in those days we didn't have any protection around the board. It was just, if you missed the board, you take out some paintwork. And always used to play with my nan, both nans, my granddad, my dad, and we would have round robin games upstairs, and it's so accessible and so easy to play. In terms of viewing darts, when I think about viewing darts on TV, I think about Jockey Wilson and of course Bristow and Bobby George and John Lowe and those players. And you go back to Bullseye and sort of traditional game show formats that you'd watch as a kid. But in terms of attending darts, it would be the Circus Tavern when my dad first got involved with darts. And it was just the most bizarre environment I've ever found myself in. Walking in, smoke everywhere, beer everywhere. And the clientele was very different to how it is now. And it was a real 900, 1,000 people, and the ceiling was just above my head. And I couldn't really believe what I was seeing when I walked in there. And my dad, who's obviously got a great eye for potential, he saw it and he felt it, and he felt that there was so much potential for the sport. And when you look at where it's come, it is phenomenal. I mean, our achievements in boxing are great, but boxing is a historic event that has seen some iconic sporting moments in so many different countries around the world. Now, when you look at the business of darts, it's definitely his greatest achievement, I feel, because it's, as I said, it's not just a great sport to watch and be at, but it's delivering on a commercial basis as a beast, really, in that space.
Yes, and I think last time we had your father on, he said similar, and he said that now it's your job to make it even better. We've now had 8 months as the chairman. What were the initial conversations and meetings like with Matt Porter and the rest of his team, and what plans did you try to set out and achieve?
I think that it's important for me not just to walk in and pretend that I'm a darts expert and I'm going to change the face of the game in terms of the formats, the tournaments, the rankings, the order of merits. I can sort of sit outside of that, and sometimes you get too close. I can sit there as a casual darts fan. That's what I am. And I've been on the PDC board for a long time. So I've been around those conversations for a long time. And, when you look at the likes of Edward Lowry and Marcus Robertson, Rod Harrington, these are absolute darts enthusiasts, They will do that job for me. My job is to look beyond that, in a commercial respect, and say, okay, where is the sport at right now in the UK? Where are the potential areas for growth? How do we develop talent? How do we develop the TV product? How do we create content? And that's something a little bit different to, I think sometimes you can get too caught up in the sport to have your commercial sort of hat on and adapt a specific strategy for that. So I think from my point of view, Matt Porter, again, one of the reasons that I don't want to come in and start changing things up and switching things up is Matt Porter is much better placed for the PDC than I am. He's been the nuts and bolts of this business and this sport for a long, long time. And we trust him and the operations team implicitly with providing the best opportunities for players, creating the best environment for players, the best events, the best operations, the best administration going. So my main focus is on how we can grow the sport internationally, I feel. And that starts with really an event that I'm so passionate about, which is the Madison Square Garden event, and which was cruelly taken away from us prior to the pandemic. And I feel like it's such a big flagship event that will enable us to get that respect, as I said to you earlier. Darts at Madison Square Garden, yeah. And I'm not saying that the US, you may have different views on this than me, the US has huge growth potential in the sport of darts. But what I do know is the shockwaves that will produce around the world of a major darts event at Madison Square Garden is a great look for our business. I feel that the attention globally is off to a great start, with a lot of markets now becoming very, very important to the business, but still so many more to come.
Yes, and we asked some of our listeners we asked all of our listeners to send in questions, and some of them did. And by far the most common question we had was about the global expansion of darts. Just off the cuff, where would you like to see the PDC next host an event?
Well, of course.
And is there areas as well that you think has potential growth beyond? You mentioned. Well,
yeah, obviously, when you look at Germany and Holland and, so many territories that we've had great success in. I mean, you only now have to look at the viewing figures in particularly Germany and the importance of the sport to one of our broadcasters there, DAZN, who are just reporting incredible viewing numbers for the darts there. So Europe is a focus as well. I feel that Australia has lots of potential. I know we've been active there in the past, and that's actually a big market for a number of our sports at Matchroom. The US as well, the Far East. I feel that once people feel and experience darts, it always changes their perception and their mindset towards it. When we speak to broadcasters and executives, all we have to do is get them to Ali Pali. Do you know what I mean? So, and that's the same with any audience, any live spectator, any TV spectator, is just letting them experience it. I guarantee if they watch it, if they follow it, they will become fans. And that's always the challenge for any new sport in any new market, where you have to penetrate it and educate that market as well for the sport. So, Far East, US, Australia, but also we don't want to take our eyes off those markets that I talked about earlier that still have so much growth potential.
Earlier today, as of when we were recording, the PDC had a major announcement that you alluded to earlier about prize money. Over £1.3 million increase in prize money for next year across a bunch of televised events, Pro Tour events, as well as 8 additional Women's Series events. How important was that prize money increase, especially after the 2 years we just had of a lot of COVID-related delays and cancellations? And
it's a 2 million increase in the prize pool, and really important. And I feel like I'd love to take all the credit for that, but that's kind of like a mission statement of my dad and classic Barry Hearn, which is not only will we not reduce the prize pool during the pandemic with no gate revenue, we will increase it. And it's a great sign for the players, because we really didn't have to. No one's expecting prize money to go up right now in the sport. But why not? our business is stronger than ever. The growth potential this year and next year exists and is real. So why not reward the players? And I feel like the increase in prize money is spread nicely across the elite side and say grassroots, but the grassroots of the professional game in the players' championships, because now we've increased those prize pools as well, which gives people more motivation to play those events, which encourages people to come through those events, get into the major tournaments, televised tournaments. And you've just got to look at the Order of Merit and the money that these guys are making. It's astounding. And it's so good to see normal working class individuals. And that's why fans love these guys, because they're normal people and they're darts players, who are going out now. And I feel that any increase in prize money, anytime you see a major announcement like this that creates headlines, it can only encourage the grassroots of the sport. Because why, as a younger player or a younger individual, money is going to incentivize you to take up a sport in many cases. Passion for the sport and wanting to compete and a love for the sport, of course, but there's no future, there's no career in the sport if you can't see an opportunity to better your life. And all of these players in the Order of Merit that are achieving are better in their life. That they're achieving on the hockey, they're changing their lives financially, and that's what us as a business is all about: providing opportunities to players, to talent, to athletes, and that's the most rewarding thing. There's nothing, in a couple of weeks you're going to see someone lift $500,000 at the World Championships. This is major prize money that you don't see in a lot of sports right now. And it also helps us, which we talked about earlier, to garner that respect from people. Wow, 15 million they're playing for a year in darts. Still to this day, I think sometimes, Burton, some people think that they play for 50 quid. And that's the frustrating thing. You go back to the size of the sport. Too many people don't recognise the size of darts as a sport and as a business. And announcements like this help us to get that respect and credibility.
Of course, and you mentioned someone will be winning $500,000 just a few weeks from now. So I guess a pair of questions to finish off on. One, your father was often on stage for that presentation after the World Final. Are you going to plan to do the same?
Well, the problem is I get booed a lot in boxing, and he gets booed quite a bit. I think I don't, because at the moment, my work has been as a board member and as a chairman, but fairly limited in this start because of our attention to our own individual businesses and in my case, boxing. I'd like to see Matt Poulter up there, to be honest with you. I think he's done such a great job. And I think he deserves all the recognition that he can get. I don't feel like my achievements yet warrant me being up on a stage as front and centre. I think it's important to speak to the media now and again to let people know our vision and plans. But until I'm full hands on deck in that respect, the people that are living and breathing it every single day are the ones that I feel should get a moment like that in a flagship event like that.
And then lastly, I know you have to be neutral as to who you want to win, but if you had to pick someone who you think is going to be lifting that trophy and winning the money, who would your pick be?
Well, I'm a big Michael van Gerwen fan. I don't mind. I know I'm supposed to be neutral, but, I've known Michael van Gerwen for a long time. When he was starting out, we used to play poker together. When he was struggling, I remember him hitting a 9-darter, I think it was in Blackpool, years ago when he was just really starting to find some form. And I chatted with him in the hotel before that, and what he's gone on to achieve, I think he's a very driven individual. And I think he's got a huge chip on his shoulder going into this tournament. And I think he's going to be really dangerous in this tournament. I think you can't rule out Gerwin Price, and I think he's been a breath of fresh air for the PDC. And I think Peter Wright is also another real stubborn individual. And And I want to see someone make a run in this tournament, you know. I remember, talk about first kind of experiences of darts. I mean, I can't remember the year, but when Kirk Shepherd made the final, you know, I remember watching that. And of course, I wasn't on the board at the time, but I watched it as a fan at home. And for me, seeing a player make a run in the Worlds, whether it's Dimitri, you know, whoever it could be, I love to see that. So I really want to see an outsider make the semis or the final of this tournament. But I do feel like Michael van Gerwen is going to be very dangerous.
But thank you so much for joining us.
No worries, Burton. Great to talk to you.
Thanks again to Eddie for joining us, and we'll finish up this show with a look at Eddie Hearn's announcement from today, a record £15 million in prize money on the PDC Tour next year. How much of a boost is this going to be for the game?
Well, I think it's huge because, and you just heard from Eddie, you know, one of the things they took pride on was the fact that they were able to go through the last 2 years without cutting the prize money to any event. Now, there's, you know, the second side to that is one way they got around that is by canceling some events, particularly Euro Tours, World Series events, and the Champions League for a variety of reasons, mostly because you couldn't stage the Euro Tour events and you couldn't stage the World Series events due to travel restrictions and other problems. So those events went by the wayside, but that was a significant amount of money that was lost to the players. Just looking at the Players' Championship prize fund increase, that's going to make up a huge portion of the amount, £750,000 to the Pro Tour events. That's in essence 5 or 6 Euro Tour events, at least based on the previous or the up to now the prize fund. Next or in 2023, according to the report, Euro Tour prizes will go up. But, you know, but over 5, just under 6 Euro Tour events worth of prize money has been added to the Players' Championship event. Over the course of 4 years, that will make up the money in terms of Pro Tour ranking events that was lost from the cancellation of 9 Euro Tour events 2 years ago and 11 this year compared to the normal 13 and 13 we'll have next year. So that is, I think, the biggest thing, because that's the money that goes to the players week in, week out. The increase to the television prize funds is a sign of just how strong the product has remained, even without being able to sell tickets for over a year and really only being able to restart the ticket sales this past summer in Blackpool. The money coming in from sponsorships, from television, from other sources is enough that there's the money to continue to increase the prize funds. Over 100,000 added to the Premier League prize fund to bring it to £1 million. £100,000 added to 4 other televised events, plus the increase of the women's series, which we've talked about a few times, was something that we thought would happen and should happen. All that combined just makes darts that much more profitable, and potentially profitable, I should say, because obviously if you're not winning matches and you're not qualifying for stuff, you're not going to make money, but it's potentially profitable for most of the tour card holders. It's, you know, over time we've reached the point where if you're number 64, if you're saving your tour card, you can make enough to live, maybe not as comfortably as you'd like, but fairly comfortably just based on darts. As the Pro Tour prize funds increase and as just the participation prize funds increase for the other televised events, we're getting to the point where it's not just the top 64, but maybe the top 75 or 80 who will be able to make a living at it. And I think eventually the goal would be for pretty much every tour card holder. This is a big step in that direction, and we'll see in a year when they announce the next set of increases, particularly the Euro Tour, what those will be. But as the money keeps coming in, especially for the Pro Tour events, it has to be considered a major, major boost.
I can't disagree with that. And just touching on one of the points that you made towards the end there about the prize money that's on the order of merit and players in that top 64, you just look at the tour card race at the moment. Post World Championship, you've got Ryan Meikle in 64th spot on £45,250, and that's before you add on all the extra money that's going to go to the players during this World Championship, and that is including 2 seasons where it has been disjointed. We've had, as you say, a lack of Euro Tour events and other events being cancelled. So you can just imagine, touch wood, what that's going to be like in 2 years' time when we have 2 full years back on the tour with the increase in prize money. What are those figures going to look like? It's going to be very interesting to see. And I guess this announcement it caught me by surprise anyway. I wasn't really expecting it because, as we've seen from the last couple of years, it has been difficult times for a lot of businesses, but the PDC have kept up their end of the bargain with the prize funds, and the announcement to push the prize funds on is great news for the game, isn't it? And you've only got to look before the pandemic that the prize money was continuing to grow, wasn't it? I was looking back earlier, 2017, it was £11 million. The following year, 12 million. 2019, 14 million. And then we've just come off the back of these last couple of years, but now it is going above 15 million pounds. So Eddie Hearn has picked up where his father Barry's left off, and he wants to push that prize money on. And if he's anything like his dad, I'm pretty sure he's got his eye on that 20 million pound mark now for the tour. And who knows, we might see that in the next few years if they continue the growth of the game that they're looking to do. But yeah, I mean, it's great news for the game, and we are seeing more money go into those elite events like the Premier League, the major events. They've all had a boost. But as you say, we've also seen the lower end, as Eddie put it, the grassroots of the professional side of things with the Players' Championship events, the prize money going up for that. And we don't know how that money is going to break down, where it's going to be going, but you've got to think they are going to look to maybe spread it across all the rounds, and we'll see gradual increases across all those rounds. So I think it's great news for all the players and any young boys or girls listening. I know we have a few younger listeners of the show. This is what a time to be a young aspiring dart player with all this money in the top level of the game. It is more of a viable career now than it's ever been before.
Now, we'll be back later in the week to look more ahead to Ali Pali, but you heard at the end of the interview there that Eddie Hearn is predicting that this will be the best Worlds ever. Do you agree with his prediction?
I mean, it's hard to argue against him, but I've been sending out some questions to a few different people. We usually do our regular feature on the website where we get some pundits and commentators to give us their predictions for the World Championship, who they think is going to win, what they're most looking forward to, stuff like that. And quite a few of them are saying that they think this could be one of the best World Championships. And to be fair, I mean, when you go back to last year, apart from that opening night where we had a small crowd at Ali Pali, the rest of it was behind closed doors. It still turned out to be a great tournament, and it got the nod in our weekly Dartscast awards for the year. But the World Championship, okay, it might have been a little bit of recency bias. I'd have gone with a Grand Slam personally, but our listeners voted the World Championship as the tournament of the year. And I guess a little bit of that helps because there were a lot more closer games with that tiebreak rule being taken out, which is back this year. So yeah, we saw a lot of games go to a deciding set, and 2-2 in the last set. That was the deciding leg. So there was a lot of drama that way. But I think, yeah, it's definitely got the potential. You look at the lineup of players that we've got, and we go back to the last World Championship with the full crowds where we had Fallon Sherrock, where she made history. She's back in the field again this year. We've got one of the legends of the game, Raymond van Barneveld. He's back in the field, and we spoke about it on last week's show, the potential second round games, former world champions. We could have Rob Cross against Barney. We could have Gary Anderson against Adrian Lewis. And that's before we get to the Christmas break. You could have games like that. So it's got all the ingredients, I think, to be one of the best World Championships. Of course, we're probably not going to know until the end of the tournament whether it has been one of the best ever. But looking on paper, looking at what we've got lined up, the schedule for the next 2 or 3 weeks at Ali Pali, I think Eddie, he's got his promoter hat on. He always has, but he could turn out to be right.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's every chance that he is right here, because if you just look at the depth of the field, and we do say this every year, but the depth of the field keeps getting better. And I think, if you look at who the last person to qualify this year was, Jason Lowe, and he only got in after Jeff Smith won the CDC Continental Cup, after all the Pro Tour events were over. I mean, Jeff Smith qualified easily for the World Championship anyway, but ended up dropping off that Pro Tour list and into the international qualifiers list as a result, which opened up a spot that Jason Lowe took. Go back a year ago, and Jason Lowe was one of the best first-year tour card holders last year. He finishes the 12th best qualifier on the Pro Tour, beat Michael Smith in the last match before Christmas in the second round to get through to the third round before we went out to Devin Peterson. Fast forward a year, he had to sneak in, and it's a bit unfortunate. He had a couple really long losing streaks. He lost his first 6 Players' Championship events of the year and then lost 6 in a row again over the summer and into October. And that put a big dent in it, but he still finished with 41st in averages, and he was the last person in. That's the depth here. And you mentioned as well some of the draws. We have first and second round matches between world champions. That's just something that we've never seen before, just based on the way the draw has worked out. And it creates from the go some really high profile matches that can go either way between players whoever gets through it has every chance to not just, make it past Christmas, but to make it all the way to the final day or couple days of the tournament. So coupling all that together, the depth of the field and just how many really good matches there are early on between legitimate contenders to go far, yeah, I think there's every chance this will be the best ever. But again, it comes down to how they play. The players are going to have to bring their game. Most of them will. Most of them will because they've been preparing for this, and this is the event that matters. But they'll still have to do it. Anything else for this week?
Just to say, big thank you to Eddie for joining us. Thank you to Dave Allen at the PDC and all the team at Matchroom for helping us put us in touch with Eddie for the chat. It was great to finally get him on the show. As we mentioned earlier, we are going to be back in a couple of days' time. We are going to be starting to look ahead to the PDC World Championship. We'll also be discussing the draw for the WDF World Championships, which took place a couple of hours ago when we were recording. So we'll be talking all about that with a few guests in a couple of days' time.
Yes, indeed. And a lot of podcasts coming up over the next month, but also a lot of darts. Again, thanks to Eddie for joining us. And you won't have to hang tight for long because we will be back soon. But you do still need to hang tight, because if you don't hang tight, who knows what will happen.